Sometime after Stuart Wilken, the cannibal serial killer of South Africa, was imprisoned, I received a call from St. Albans prison, summoning me since Stuart was out of control in his cell and he was calling for me. While I was at St. Albans, my colleague Detective Derek Norsworthy, who had secured the confession from Stuart, arranged for me to interview Brydone Brandt, a serial killer who had been arrested by Detective Piet Bessinger, and he was imprisoned in the same facility. I was not involved in this investigation, but I was very grateful for the opportunity to interview Brydone. My interview with Brydone reminded me of the Greek myth of Hercules and Cerberus, both embodied in one man. The 12th and most dangerous labor of the Greek hero Hercules was to capture Cerberus, the vicious three-headed dog that was the gateway to the entrance of Hades, the underworld. On his way to the underworld, Hercules fought many monsters, heroes, and ghosts, always protecting the innocent. Hades dictated that Hercules could have Cerberus, but only if he overpowered the beast with nothing more than his bare hands and own brute strength. The fates did not smile upon Brydone Brandt when he was born on the 15th of April 1964 in the South African town of Welkom. His father personified Cerberus's father, Typhon, the fire-breathing giant covered with dragons and serpents. Family fun to Brydone's father, who was aggressive and sadistic, was to unleash his sons upon one another like a pack of dogs. Brian, being the youngest son and the little runt, did not come off too well during these fights, but it made him defiant. His father would also tie the children over a chair and beat them with a sjambok or a wire when they were naughty. His father was also a wife abuser. Clearly, Brydone had no positive father figure, neither in his own father nor in his older brothers to identify with, corresponding to one of my predictions in my Origins of Serial Killers theory. So much like abandoned boys, Brydone compensated by creating a hero figure in his imagination, a strong, larger-than-life protector of the innocent, fighting monsters in his quest, whom I compared to the hero Hercules. Brydone's deviant sexual behavior probably originated by the fact that he was still breastfed by his mother up to the age of 9. There was also incest in the family. Brydone claimed that he was 10 years old when his second brother began sexually molesting him. His eldest brother also forced the youngest brother to commit incest with their sisters. Since they were very poor, Brydone could not afford drugs. He made do with sniffing petrol and drinking turpentine, frying his brain. He admitted to accidentally killing chicks. So as a child, in his home environment, Brydone learned how to fight, how to rape, and he was a victim of rape himself. He was always yearning for the hero to come and rescue him. 2 behavioral disorders diagnosed with children are oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder. They are similar, but conduct disorder is worse, for it is characterized by consistent acts of violence. Brydone's was so bad that by the age of 14, he was placed in an industrial school for boys by the welfare. A background check revealed that he was considered uncontrollable at school for continuously not attending school, fighting, and he assaulted a teacher. Yet, despite it being called a place of safety, his life in the industrial school did not change much, as he was sodomized by older boys, he was bullied, and he was involved in fights. Eventually, he was sent to a reformatory, which is basically a prison for children. He claimed he often went hungry and that they treated them as children. Interesting to me is that Brydone denies that indeed by this time he was a juvenile delinquent and that he was a criminal. Throughout his narrative of his life, he always impressed upon me that he was indeed the wronged party and the wronged hero in these fights, and that he was in fact a soft-hearted, kind man. He completed grade 10 and then he joined the army. And he said he was a member of the military police. But once again, he was discharged for fighting. A pattern was now clearly established of Brydone getting into physical fights, always blaming the other parties for ganging up on him and the authorities taking their side. He had absolutely no insight in his own involvement or taking accountability for his own actions. His ideal self, to whom he had to live up to, was Hercules the hero. After the army, he worked for the municipality of Welkom in the Parks Division, but then as a young man of 20 in March 1984, almost having trained for it all his life, Brydone turned into a professional criminal. Up to 1992, authorities could have considered his crimes as small time, for he was charged with crimen injuria, theft, assault, damage to property, driving under the influence of alcohol, and fraud, for which he received suspended sentences or fines. No one realized that this small-time habitual violent offender, whose punishment was only fines, had already committed a murder and had gotten away with it. He alluded that he had worked as a male prostitute for men and women when he needed money, probably to pay his fines. His father died in 1990. In 1991, he was sentenced to a year's imprisonment for stealing furniture. He was released soon enough. Brydone tells that in 1992, he intervened when a man was assaulting his wife, for it reminded him of his father beating up his own mother. He told me that he could not stand if a man was hitting a woman, so he stepped up. Typically, Hercules stepping into his story, fighting the monsters. And then in the same sentence, Cerberus raises his three heads. Brydone tells that he had previously been charged of rape by his girlfriend. He claimed she did this out of spite because he hit her when she had abused the baby. Brydone is incapable of acknowledging that Cerberus inside him, and he was always calling upon Hercules to conquer his inner monster. Yet Brydone's claim of defending himself was rejected by the court, and he was charged with attempted murder, and he was sent to jail in 1992. His mother committed suicide while he was in prison. Upon his release in 1996, he lodged at a boarding house in Port Elizabeth, and then he worked as a bodyguard for a so-called mafia-type doctor, as he called him. He alleged that he was requested by this doctor to kill a certain woman and a man. The woman was called Julia Noncongwana, but instead he invited them both to move in with him. Again, Hercules coming to the rescue of the oppressed. By September 1997, Brydone lodged at another boarding house. He shared accommodation with a 52-year-old man called Glenton Dean Morris. Brydone alleged that one night when they were both drunk, he had a fight with Glenton over money, during which Glenton attacked him with a shifting spanner. He then retaliated, defended himself, and he killed Glenton. Then he cut up the mattress on which Glenton was killed, and he stuffed it into plastic bags, and he shuffled them into the dustbins outside. He also dumped Glenton's body upside down in one of the dustbins. A blood-drenched and delirious Brydone was picked up by an ambulance and taken to hospital. The other residents found Glenton's body, and they alerted to the police to Brydone being the murderer. He was traced to hospital, where he was arrested for the murder of Glenton, and he was interrogated then by Detective Bessinger. On the 22nd of September in 1997, Brydone made a full confession to a magistrate, admitting to more murders. He said, on the 9th of December 1989, he took Jean Natzlow, a prostitute of the port, to the Port Elizabeth municipality building where they had sex. He claimed that they had an argument about the price, and he killed her with a knife. Her body was discovered on the stairs of the building, lying on her back. She was half naked, and her private parts were cut to ribbons with a knife. He said the following month, on the 5th of January 1990, he met Sari Skuman and two other prostitutes. He drove all three prostitutes to the Marine Drive near the University of Port Elizabeth, which is on the coastal road. They sat at the roadside tables where they discussed the prices for sex. Brydone and Sari then got into the car, and they left to two other prostitutes next to the road. He drove to the bushes next to the ocean. A little while later, the other two women saw him driving past them alone in his car. And they then went looking for their friend, and they found the body of Sari with a wine bottle inserted into her private parts. The cause of death was a fractured skull caused by a rock. They removed the body, but they left the body. They removed the bottle, but they left the body right there, and they did not alert the police. A little while later, the body was rediscovered again by vagrants who alerted the police. Unbeknown to them at the time, it had been dragged further into the bush where the other prostitutes had found it originally, and it was naked, lying face down, and a stick this time was inserted into the private parts. It was only later, when it came to light, that the police managed to trace the prostitutes, and they showed the police where they had found the body, with a bottle inserted into it. Brydone admitted to Detective Bessinger that he went back to the scene, he collected the body, and he drove around with it in his car. Then he went back and he dumped it further into the bushes. He denied ever inserting the bottle or the stick. Hercules claimed that he was a good lover who read in magazines how to satisfy a woman lovingly. He could not acknowledge Cerberus, who reverted to inserting phallic objects into a woman. I suspect Brydone might have suffered from erectile dysfunction and that he inserted these phallic objects to symbolically appease this and not to punish or humiliate his victim, for she was already dead when he inserted the stick. Brydone also confessed that on the 9th of December 1996, in the boarding house, while he was sharing his bed with a young boy who came to him looking for accommodation, Julia, whom in his Hercules role he also had previously rescued from the mafia doctor, joined him in bed. He said she was drunk and he asked her to leave. She refused and they had a fight. Cerberus triumphed over Hercules. In his confession, Brydone said he could not remember how it happened, but she fell and she broke her neck. He said then he paid another ex-Satanist to remove her body, and this man shoved her body into a green plastic bag and dumped it behind the Feather Market Hall. The body was discovered, but the case remained unresolved until Brydone confessed to it. Now, dumping a body in a dustbin is the same modus operandi he followed with the murder of Glenton. He claimed that he had killed another prostitute in Duncan Park, but this case could never be proved. In May 1999, he was sentenced to 4 life sentences for the murders of John Natlazo, Saris Kuman, Julia Nonkongwana, and Glenton Dean Morris. Brydone's pattern continued in prison. He was involved in many fights, one of which left a big scar on his face. By the time I met Brandon in prison, he claimed that he had converted to Christianity. He told me, "I love to sing and give sweets to little children. I just want to make people happy. My heart goes out to all the men and women who've been rejected by their loved ones without reason. To the women who have to take so much from their cowardice men, assault and drunkenness. While there are so many men who will love and comfort them, of which I am one. Maybe I am too sensitive, too lovable, and too protective." Brydone wrote me several letters after my visit, all adorned with little flowers, reminding me of the teenage girl's love notes. I never responded. In prison at last, Hercules prevailed over Cerberus. But in prison, Brydone had no access to his preferred victims. The monster Cerberus is still there, and it will be unleashed if ever he is released on parole. If you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel and give us your thumbs up. And if you are seriously interested in profiling criminal minds, please join my Patreon community, where I provide more detailed information and background by clicking on our QR code provided. Thank you for joining us.